Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love? Talking about games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 2,980 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. We are 20 subscribers away from 3,000. We are doing part 10 of these Xbox 360 videos. Thank you all so much as always. And hey, thank you to the people starting what might be a channel meme of the "you know what I love," which that's funny. I enjoyed that in the last video. And yes, thank you for the compliment on the haircut. But anyways, that's not why you're here today. We actually are covering 10 more games and a bonus because I managed to snatch up one of my Xbox 360 holy grails that I've already talked about. And if you've seen the thumbnail, you know what I'm talking about. But let's not bury the lead. Let's get right to it.
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, so starting off, let's jump back to February of 2024. So I had just picked up Arkham Origins, and I was seeing these hidden gems videos and these other videos about the Xbox 360, and I was just thinking, you know, there's not a lot of good games coming out this year. I feel like I am not that knowledgeable on the 360. Let's see if there's some games I should pick up. So I picked up Spectral Force 3 and Zoid's Assault. And one of the games that I saw was a game called Culdcept Saga. Now, I didn't just want this game because it was expensive. When I was looking for it, it was about $40. So I saw videos talking about it, claiming it was sort of a mixture of Monopoly and a card game, kind of like Magic the Gathering. And what's funny is I remember either seeing a Metal Jesus video years ago talking about this, and it didn't seem all that intriguing, but seeing it this time, immediately I was just enthralled with, I need to know how that plays. So I went to eBay. This was back in February of 2024, or March of 2024, maybe the first week of March. They were all gone, and they literally had all sold out the day before. And so I just continued to look, search, daily, weekly, set a reminder. Couldn't find it anywhere. It just suddenly exploded. And I was going to start doing these videos talking about the Xbox 360, but I held off on it until April because I didn't want to film it until I had this to talk about. And finally, I just gave up. And in the first video, I do talk about Culdcept Saga. Well, now I've actually put in about 5 hours. And I feel that in all the videos I've seen, and also the way I got this was great. So if you guys don't think you can get deals, I picked this game up for about $70 in a lot of 6 games, 3 of which were sealed. There was a copy of Infinite Undiscovery in it too. Sometimes you get lucky. Literally, I had just finished looking at a auction of Fist of the North Star Kin's Rage go for $120 for a complete version of it. And then somehow I saw an auction ending in a minute that had Culdcept Saga in it, and it was only at $60. So I threw in my bid, won the dang thing, came in pristine condition, has the manual, love it. But one of the things I would say in the videos I've seen covering this game is I don't think they do a good enough job of describing it. So yes, and also, funnily enough, all the footage only shows the first stage because yes, there is an extremely steep learning curve. So what I would say is if you've ever played kind of cooperative or intricate board games, things like Mechs and Minions, Gloomhaven, Dominion, Ticket to Ride, Settlers of Catan, like that is much more what this game is akin to. And yes, there is a deck building instrument or a deck building aspect to it that kind of makes it like a Magic the Gathering, kind of makes it like a Yu-Gi-Oh! But I think I don't enjoy all that stuff. You know, I played Magic when I was in the 7th grade. But anyways, the way the game works. So there are 4 different colored tiles. So you have red, yellow, green, and blue. And then you have monsters that are of 5 different colors. So you have those same colors and then a neutral color. Generally, the point of the game is that you want to land on one of those colored tiles, and then you have the ability, once you have enough points, to change it to one of the colors you want, or to just place a monster on that. So you don't have to place a green monster on a green tile, but it behooves you to do that because then it gives them extra health and extra damage. As well as the more color tile you own, the more links you have between your monsters, and then that allows you to then do more damage and have more defense. Now, there's also a discrepancy between money and magic. So it's the same thing. It calls it gold, but it's really the same thing. And each one of your cards has a designated gold amount, and that's how much it costs to cast it. And then when you land on an opposing enemy's space, you can either pay them that amount of magic, which it'll say on the tile, say 20, or you can try to fight them. Now, if you fight them and lose, you lose your card and you have to pay them. If you fight them and win, you then take that card, or you kill their card, take over that space, and the card you use becomes the monster on that space. However, there's also a third scenario where neither of you wins. And if neither of you win, you don't lose your card, they don't lose their card, but then you still have to pay the piper. And why people say it's like Monopoly is because you do have the option when you land on that space, or if you land on either the go space or a fort space, to go and then essentially buy a house or upgrade to a motel by using your amount of stored money and then applying it into that space. And that's sort of like investing in yourself, because the whole point of the game is that there are targets to win the match. So the first match, you have to get to 5,000 points and then pass go. So the way you do that is by slowly building up the tiles and then by slowly building up the money. But you can quickly, a la Mario Party, see a big change. Now, I took 3 times to beat the first level, but then I was rolling. I beat the second level and the third level. The fourth level introduces a 3-player fight. And in that one, it took about 3 hours, so that's why they say this game is not for everyone. It is very deliberate, but it is also very intellectual. And if you like intricate board games, this game is for you. And that's why when I saw the people talking about it, I can't remember, I think it was like Garbage Gamer or something of that, like a garbage man who's a gamer. He talked about it, and when he talked about the way this game was, it clicked. And everything I tried getting it. Now, there's so many systems to learn. I still don't completely understand everything as far as the counters or the order of operations. Some cards, and that's the thing, is you have to memorize this stuff. And the thing about the AI is that yes, you can see the enemy's cards and when they come up, but you have a split second to recognize. Versus the AI always seems to know the best way to counter you. So if you attack them and they have a card that will bolster their defense, and then you have a card that will bolster your attack, they will almost always use that bolster your defense card. So if you don't use that, and even if you use the bolster the attack, there's no guarantees that so they'll always counter you. So that's kind of where people say the AI is cheap, is they're just smart. And it's one of those things where they know how all the abilities interact. They'll know when they can negate you. They'll know when they can do this and that. Anyways, I'm going to spend so much time talking about this game. But yes, well worth it. And I am so bummed this game is so expensive and obscure. I love it. I really, really love it. And that is one, you guys, if you can pick it up, do it. If it sounds like your kind of game, it is. It absolutely is. It's not for everyone. It is not for everyone, but I think it could be. And yes, you do, even when you lose a match, you do still win cards. And then you can go in and you can organize your deck. And generally, you should, much like in Magic the Gathering, you should have a focus. So you should have a bunch of green monsters, a bunch of yellow monsters, red or blue, or have a combination of the two. So you don't have land cards. The tiles themselves are the land cards. And you just have to spend money to display, to distribute them. And it behooves you to have them on the same type. But you don't have to. And then the neutral ones are just kind of a roll of the dice. Anyways, I could talk all day on this game. It is so good. All right, moving on to the next game. Now this is a 8-game digital collection that I was completely unaware of until I saw a video from Legally Insane Gamer, which is a channel I've really come to enjoy and helped me find several of these Xbox games I picked up. But this is the Capcom Digital Collection. Now, what initially had me very interested is that it has a physical version of Bionic Commando Rearmed 2. And for some reason, I've gone to try and download that game on the Xbox sale. It's like $1.50. And every time I try it, there's an error. But it also has that game, and then it has Final Fight Double Impact. But Double Impact was a release of the Final Fight arcade, but also of Magic Sword arcade. Now, Magic Sword is a game I have on the SNES, but I've always heard that the arcade version is the definitive way to play it, and is also two-player co-op. So finding out this had a physical version of that game, which, as far as I know, is still nowhere else to this day, had to jump on it. Now, I did check out the other games. Now, I'm not a huge fighting game guy, but this is a version of Street Fighter 2 HD Remix, which I think has Akuma in it. At least he's in the title screen. I barely played it, much like I didn't play Puzzle Fighter 2. 1942 Joint Strike is sort of a reimagining, remake of the 1942 series from the NES. It's a horizontal shooter, pretty cool, military-based. Played the first level, enjoyed it. The other ones they have are the Wing Battlefield Command 3 and then Rocketeer, which these are kind of twin-stick shooters. One is more of a military base, sort of like Ikari Warriors, and the other one you're in an alien spacecraft, and both of those games were a lot more fun than I thought they'd be going into it. So I would put more time into that. And then the last game on this collection is a game called Flock, where you play as a UFO having to herd sheep into pens. And yes, this is exactly the type of Xbox Live arcade game I can get down with. I can't believe Capcom made it. It's more or less a puzzle game, and it's fun. It's dumb fun. That's something I could see myself and Jen playing. And all in all, the collection's getting up there. I think I picked it up for $25. There is no manual that comes with it. So once again, as we've learned from, I think Warehouse Dave was the one who pointed that out. So you can see the case. There's the manual in the background there. Then it says down here. But that is one definitely glad to have. Once the Xbox store shuts down, some of these games aren't backwards compatible, I believe. I like the Street Fighter 2 one, but it's just nice to have. All right. Now here's one that I picked up a while ago. I just hadn't gotten around to playing it. It is very much like a Dynasty Warriors type game where you have a bunch of enemies and you control some all-powerful guy or gal. And this is Kingdom Under Fire Circle of Doom. So I'm not familiar with this franchise. I just picked this up because this was one of the games I saw recommended as pretty cool. I think I got it for about $10. I did end up completing it when I originally got it. It didn't have the manual, but luckily I was able to find the manual pretty cheap. And it's just it's kind of a little bit more linear than Dynasty Warriors. So you go through the levels, you attack a bunch of lizardmen, they die, and then you move on to the next group of a bunch of lizardmen. There's definitely RPG type elements in it. You can pick up items and augments, as well as there's different abilities. Though I really didn't play it that long. I played as the big dude with the hood, had a giant sword, and just it felt a little too mindless. So that's why I don't really enjoy these games that much. I want a little bit more nuance into my thing. Like, yeah, it's really cool destroying tons and tons of enemies, but that's why Ashura's Wrath was so cool, is because you do that, but then you have, in my opinion, more to it than this one is. But like I said, I didn't give it that fair of a shake. But if that's your jam, definitely one to pick up that has not exploded, which all these games I'm talking about today, other than Culdcept Saga, have not really exploded. That's why we're talking about them. Now, here's another one I saw recommended that looked like a unique experience. Really didn't think I'd be picking this up, but I've kind of been on a kick of buying submarine games. So when I found out there was a submarine game on the Xbox 360 that was an exclusive, I had to pick it up, and that is Naval Assault, the Killing Tide. Now, this does not have the slipcover. Forgive me. I know I'm a horrible collector. In fact, it doesn't even have the manual either. But I got it like $15, and this is a surprisingly expensive game for what it looks like. Like, you would see this and not think it's a $20, $30 game, but that's kind of what it's going for. In this, you play as a submarine back in, I think it's in World War II, and you were just charged with basically doing submarine type stuff. So you're sinking vessels, you're diving into the depths, and then you're gunning out planes up in the air. There's three different three different planes of existence you can be in. So you can be on the surface. That's where you have the turret gun where you can fire it, and then the way your ship moves is you just kind of have an autopilot where you can go backwards or forwards. Now, also important to remember your bearing, because the second plane is when you can have your up periscope, and then that's when you can fire torpedoes. And I think it's only in that one. I don't think you can fire torpedoes when you're in the first plane, so I think it's just the second one. And in that, you can then follow the torpedoes until they meet their mark, which is always fun. You can't steer them, but it just allows you to see them and verify they're going to hit their target. And then the third plane is the depths, where you're completely in stealth mode, and that's where you can't be directly fired at, but you still have to watch out for depth charges. And I played the first 2 levels, and there's a lot of levels, so I didn't realize you had to push it to the right, and you can get like 15, 16 extra campaigns. Is it a great game? No. Is it a unique experience? Yes, and it's one that I think is worth having. I would put more time into it. I don't generally like a lot of games like this, but like I said, I'm on a kick to have some submarine games, and one that was a more modernish one I had to pick up. Just like there's a game called Aqua that's on the Xbox Arcade download. I'm waiting to see if it gets a deal here before it gets shut down. Just because I don't know why. It's a silly thing, but I want to make a video talking about submarine games someday, so that's one I wanted to pick up for that. Alright, now here's one of the better ones we played this week. So this one was recommended to me by more of you guys than I can count, and the funniest part is that I'd been seeing this game at the game store for weeks, not months, but weeks, and seeing it and be like, man, should I get that? It's $10. Should I get that? Ironically, I didn't get it at that game store. I ended up getting it at the flea market when I went game chasing on Father's Day, and I got for $8, so I did end up saving a couple of dollars. And that game is the First Templar, and more or less this game is just like the Cursed Crusade, but in my opinion, I think it's better. Honestly, I think it's better. Now, at the beginning of the game, you control 2 Templars. Now, this is a couch co-op game, so you can play this with a friend just like you can in Cursed Crusade. There's also Wilhelm screams in it, I believe. I think this was the game that had that, which if you know the Wilhelm scream, it's a very famous scream that's been used in games and cinema for the last 70 years, and I always enjoy it when I hear it. But more or less, this is a game where you kind of just start off, it's during the First Crusades, and you're just going around being Templars and trying to help the countryside. It seems like you get charged with taking down a beast. You get charged with helping, stand up to this. So there's less intrigue than in the Cursed Crusade, but in my opinion, I enjoyed this better. Controls a little bit better, and eventually you end up rescuing this girl, who I think ends up replacing that second Templar, because there is the ability to upgrade yourself, but the second Templar only has the ability to give himself more health and more damage and has less item slots. So it's kind of like that guy's days are numbered. So I don't know if that was going to happen in mission 3 or 4. And it is a linear game too, so that's why it has the illusion of being open world, but you get to the end of the stage and you're done. You can, if you're playing by yourself, you can swap between both of your players simultaneously. And then the AI is pretty smart too. There are executions, there are combinations. It doesn't have dismemberment, so you can't have everything. But this is a solid pickup that you can still find for dirt cheap. Couch co-op, I don't know what else. I mean, this is exactly why I wanted to do these kind of videos, is to get some more eyes on this game, because this game is super good, and everyone who recommended it to me, you guys were spot on. Now, here's one that might have been, I know I love Culdcept Saga, but as far as just pure entertainment and fun, I really enjoyed the time I played this. I felt like I was stepping place into a ridiculous action movie, and that game is John Woo Presents Stranglehold. So I'd seen a couple people cover this game and say that it gets a little repetitive and a little redundant. Yes, it can, but it also gets a little awesome at all times. Everything you do in this game is so stylized and incredible. Anytime you dive and have an enemy in your sights, the time slows down, and then you can do an epic headshot, shotgun shot. You can jump on rails so basically, anytime you're aiming and you do an action, so you can slide over a table, go down rails, climb up a wall, it slows time down, and then you have this amazing interlude where you can just gun people down, a la like the bullseye in Red Dead Redemption. There's also even the ability to slow time down at random anyways. And the more you do this, the more you build up your combo meter, which then allows you to then either heal yourself so you can play like no one, it doesn't matter if you get hit, no cover-based worries here, because you can just do tons of killing and heal yourself. So it's a lot of that risk rewards, similar to sort of Doom 2016 or Warhammer 40k Space Marine. Then, as you get deeper in the game, you unlock additional things you can use with your combos, one of which being a Deadeye. So you can just, you can initiate this Deadeye aim, you fire the shot, bullet time follows the bullet into the person, and then they go, oh! So that's why it's over-the-top cinematic. When you run into stuff, oranges go flying, crates go flying, things get damaged. Like, it is dumb, and it is repetitive. But it is dumb and repetitive and exactly what I like to do in my games. So I cannot recommend that more, and it is dirt cheap. Now there is a collector's edition, or at least a different edition with a different cover that's a little bit more expensive. So I actually passed on that one for 25 or 15 when I probably shouldn't have. At the same time at the swap meet when I missed out on Tornado Outbreak for 35. But this game you can find for $6 to $10, and my goodness, best $6 to $10 you can spend. One of the best for that value. If that sounds enjoyable, yes, there are times where you can find yourself flopping around, jumping around, but man, it's so far and few between, and it is so awesome when you're not doing that I don't mind it. I don't mind looking like Magikarp flopping around to have the amazing action sequences that happen every other 10 seconds. Now, here's one that I took a chance on. I've heard no one talk of this game, and it looked interesting. I can't remember how I came across it. I have not seen this in anyone's videos. No one has talked about it, and it looks to be like an old school Rainbow Six or SOCOM game mixed with a top-down RTS combination, kind of like Diofield Chronicles, really. And that game is Raven Squad. Now, this is a very cheap game. You can find this for $6 still, $10 still. And what's so unique about it is you can basically be in a first-person shooter, and you have a squad of 3 guys. So each one of them has their own loadout. So they all have a machine gun, and then one will be the grenade guy, one will be the rocket launcher guy, and then one will be this. And you can swap between them in first-person mode, or you can go up into tactical mode, and then you can control them like in, say, Cannon Fodder, or in Command and Conquer. And then you can assign them to go move and do this and that, and you can monitor their health. Now, the first mission, there is a part that's a little janky where I got blocked by some crates that I, for the life of me, cannot figure out how to get past until I just somehow did. So, it's funny, the more I play some of these games and the more I think of these reviews from back then, especially as I'm playing 10 games in a week right now, or 11 this week, but still 10 games in a week, I'm like, sometimes I think these reviews might have been done in an hour. And then just talking about that, extrapolating that. So I can imagine playing the first mission and getting stuck and having no idea what to do and be like, this game is terrible. Because who's going to watch? Who's going to care? This is made by Evolved Games. No one knows this studio. And Atomic Motion and South Peak again, the Velvet Assassin people. That's how I found this, is because I was looking in the South Peak games to see what else they made, and Raven Squad came up. Anyways, in the second mission, if you manage to get past the second mission, you unlock a second squad, and the second squad has a sniper in it, and also has a couple of, so each squad has its own dedicated members. So what I found really fun in the second mission is I would take the command of the sniper squad, I would snipe people, and then I would send the other squad because I could assign them in the tactical view and have them work. So remember that game Stormrise I talked about several weeks ago that was just janky and bad? I feel like this game does sort of a similar concept, but so much better. And I think this is a true hidden gem. I really do. I've played now almost 100 Xbox 360 games in the last few months. And yes, it is not perfect. It has some of the feedback that I didn't like in Darkest of Days, but mixing it with, once again, like ActRaiser, you don't have to be the best, but if you have the most unique melding of concepts that can make a unique and enjoyable experience, that alone can be well worth the price of admission. And right now, this game is like $6 to $10. Pick it up. Trust me. I'm not saying it's the best game ever, but this is very, very cool and really surprising how it just completely got lost in the shuffle. And yeah, I think it's a good one. Now, back to another military-based, squad-based game. This game is pure ridiculousness. Now, I never watched the A-Team, but I can imagine that this game was definitely inspired with kind of that A-Team vibe. And that game is The Outfit. So in The Outfit, it's kind of similar where you're controlling as a like it's almost like the Army Men game. So this reminds me a lot of the Army Men Sarge's Heroes specifically. And you can drop things on the battlefield, and you can call in a tank, you can call in a jeep, you can call in this and that, airstrikes, and it's just dumb fun. If you die, you can change to one of the other two main commanders. So there's the lieutenant, the captain, and the commander, I think. And each one of them has a slightly different loadout. One has a flamethrower, one has a shotgun, one has a rocket launcher. And it's just dumb fun. I played the first stage of it. Really got an inkling for what it's like. Reminds me a lot of the Battalion Wars games too. But just really fun. Another cheap game, $6 to $10. I think that's, I mean, I've seen it constantly, but not everywhere, but I've seen it enough to know it's out there. And really a solid one. One that I had seen recommended, and I definitely agree with it. Now here's one that I probably wouldn't recommend, even though it is still fairly cheap. It's a Square Enix game. It's the only turn-based RPG I'm talking about, and I will tell you, it's hard to get into these turn-based RPGs in just an hour or so, but this one just was not doing it for me, and that is The Last Remnant. Now, it's got a cool foil cover, but it reminds me a little bit of Bahamut Lagoon's squad, or kind of Ogre Battles squad that then goes in, but then you have turn-based battles a la Suikoden in it, and it doesn't quite line up. The story is definitely far-flung and out there. Your sister gets kidnapped, and then you somehow run into the marquee of the kingdom, and immediately you're like Mr. like, all right, bro, fist pump. Let's go. Let's do it, brah. Like, you just turn into a Mountain Dew Dorito guy out of nowhere. Like, before this, you had been a really, genuine, nice kid, and then suddenly, as soon as you run into the guy who doesn't save you, because you end up on a battlefield and you have this pendant that seems to have some big magical properties, but the turn-based combat wasn't really doing it for me. Now, I did not give it nearly as much time, but between this and then Enchanted Arms that I played last week, Enchanted Arms all day long. Though this one's still a fairly cheap one. Bear in mind, it is a 2-disc game, so if you do find it, make sure it has both discs, and I think you can still find it for about $10. Okay, we'll talk about that one last. Instead, this one we'll just do briefly. Now, I don't like a lot of sports games, but I always like trying them just because I like to make sure that I'm, seeing what's out there. Snowboarding is definitely one of my least represented sports genres, and I had picked up SSX on the Xbox 360, the kind of the new one. Didn't like it that much, and I recently found out there was another game called Stoked Big Air Edition. So the Big Air Edition is the one you want to get, and this was like a $10, $6 game, but I know it had a small print run, especially the Big Air Edition, which is the one that you want to get if you want to get it. And for snowboarding games, I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed the SSX remake, or relaunch, or whatever it was that came out on the Xbox. But other than that, I mean, it allows you to dress your character at the beginning, and you have access to everything, so that was kind of cool. You didn't have to go through and unlock all that stuff. And you're basically, there's different challenges where you can do tricks, or you can do a photo op, or you can do different, like the trick system seems a little harder to pull off in my opinion, so that's kind of why I got off it. And then you have these downhill races where you're trying to either beat ghosts or other players, and the first level I couldn't get through until I realized that you have to have your guy crouch by pushing the right stick forward, which the Xbox 360 seems to have done that a lot. You'll notice a lot of games require you to use the right stick in a way that is like flicking a sword, or almost in the way that motion controls were, which makes sense since this was around that same era. But I'm just glad that seems to have gone away, and we don't have that as much lately with different games. We put it back to a button prompt, which I appreciate more. But yeah, that one's cheap one to pick up if you see it for cheap. And then the last game is a game that I've seen a lot of people talk about and say it's incredible. And I had an interesting journey with this one. Now, it is still fairly cheap. You can still find it for about $10, $15, $20. I think I saw one at the game store this week that was $18. So people are starting to wake up to it. I've heard a lot of comparisons to the BioShock series, which I have not played BioShock, but seeing footage from BioShock or seeing footage from Fallout, it has that vibe. And the game is Singularity. Now, one of the things that's surprising about this game is it got really poor reviews, but it's a very interesting concept. However, much like in Raven Squad, I have inclinations. So let me just say, I played about 2 hours of this. It was very slow. It's a slow burn starting off. It is very much emergent storytelling in the world. You can read recordings, you can watch videos. You end up on this island, you get attacked by an EMP. Now, your character is completely mute, which I don't really like. I know some people do. I don't. I like playing as a character because I don't want to just impart myself on this person, because the first thing you do is you end up at this island that is an old abandoned Soviet workstation. Which, yes, this week we had a lot of Soviet things coming up from the past. I think that was in another one of these games. There was a big Soviet presence too, or was it last week? Anyways, there was a big Soviet presence, and then they just disappeared. And then when you walk into this facility, somehow you get transported 60 years into the past. And then the first thing you do when you're transported back to the past, there's a giant fire. You go and you rescue someone. And the guy you rescue just so happens to be like Vladimir Putin. And so as soon as you go back into the present, then that big statue of Stalin now is a big statue of the guy you rescued. And then that sets the plot. So basically there are time loops going around where you will go back into the present, or the past rather, to correct issues. It then alters the present, then you go backwards and forwards. But you don't really find that out immediately. Instead, you just end up back on the island in the present, and then it gets a survival horror section. But you see these echoes of the past where you're seeing dozens and dozens of children die, basically. And as someone who's a father of a 2-year-old, I can tell you that that's kind of where the game gets a little excessive and a little much. I don't know about you guys, but I don't need it to go that hard. I get it. It's a game. It's not real, but it's also not necessary. And so when you think of these reviews and you see these things, I have my estimations that that's probably playing into it a little bit, because if you have any sort of person who is a parent playing that, and then it starts off slow and you read that you're supposed to have these really cool guns, this ability to rewind and fast forward time and build things, but then the first hour of the game is a survival horror type thing, which I don't enjoy getting scared that much either, and it really was kind of terrifying. And then you don't really get your ability. So in Dark Sector you get your ability, and then it's alright, glaives galore. But in this game, it takes you a long time to get to the thing that's essentially let's call it the portal gun. And then that allows you to then, say there's a bridge that disintegrated from years of decay, you can then hit a button and it puts it back to normal. Or you can, you have a thing that's blocking your path, you can disintegrate it in real time, that section, and then you can go backwards and forwards. So that's kind of the puzzle base of it. And then you unlock another gun a little bit later where it's called the Seeker gun that acts like the Seeker missile launcher in Metal Gear Solid, where you'll fire it and then you can in real time direct the bullet to then hit someone directly in the face. And once again, once you get to that, then I'm all in. I'm like, okay, great, give me this gameplay. But before that, with all of the heavy story, all the exposition, your partner that's this and that, you have no dialogue, you're learning about this and this, you go back in time, it's so expedition heavy that I haven't bought in yet, because I don't know if I'm enjoying playing it, and then you're throwing in these heavy concepts that may turn me off from wanting to get more invested, which is in my opinion might be why some reviewers didn't, and it reflected in the scores. But ultimately, do recommend it. Really did enjoy it. It's a little slow. It's a little slow to start. But yes, there you go. There are 10 more games and a bonus game that you should pick up before they get even more expensive. And yes, some of these expensive games you can still get lucky on. So yes, I know this was probably a longer one because I spent 10 minutes talking about Culdcept. So we'll wrap this up. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. Hopefully we're celebrating 3,000 subs next week. That would be insane. I know I had some requests to do a belly dance, to do a tier list, to talk about my top 3 console, top 3 games. I will definitely try and do an amalgamation of some of that. I like the one about my top 3 games for my top 3 consoles, but I might just have to do all consoles because I don't know if I can do a top 3 consoles. Honestly, it changes. It's kind of one of those things where I did a top 50 games of all time back in I think 2019 or 2020, and it's strange. Like it not that it depends on the day, but your tastes do change. For years, I've been saying Link to the Past is my favorite game of all time, and it's just the default answer. But now I don't know if that's the case anymore. It might have been superseded by XCOM Enemy Unknown, or it might have been superseded by Final Fantasy Tactics, or maybe it still is. I don't know. But anyways, thank you guys so much for your time, for your comments, for being with us on this journey. I don't know how many more of these we got in us, but I'm going to try and get up until the Xbox 360 store closes, and then we'll see. But hey, we got content coming for days. I got so much we can talk about, and as always, it's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.